Okay, so this next example I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, is a little bit trickier because of the phase shift. So let's talk about each of these separately. The amplitude, again, is the absolute value of A, which in this case is the absolute value of 3, which is just 3. The period is going to be 2 pi over the absolute value of B, which in this case is 3. So my period this time is 2 pi over 3, and that gets tricky also, but I'm going to revisit that idea down here, so don't get too caught up in that yet. And then my phase shift is negative C over B, and this time I do have a C value there. So this is negative, and then C is negative pi, so this is negative pi all over B, which is 3. So that gives me pi over 3 is my phase shift. So here's this, and here's this. Now, to kind of help out with these two ideas, let's look at this idea. So I talked about this one on that last video just briefly. I said that, let me go back to it so that you can see it again. Okay, so we said that if we solve this for an interval containing 1 cycle, that is helpful. So again, in this one, I'm going to use this to show myself the interval that I'm talking about. So in this case, my bx plus c was right here, 3x minus pi. So 3x minus pi goes right here, less than or equal to 2 pi. And then I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to add pi to all three. That gives me pi less than or equal to 3x less than or equal to, this would be 3 pi if I add pi to it. And then I'm going to divide everything by 3. So pi over 3, x, and pi. Okay, so here's what this tells me. This tells me that my interval, that whole cycle that I'm talking about, is going to go from pi over 3 up to pi. So I want to know what that looks like on this graph up here. So first, I need to really break this one down because it's in my intervals should really be thirds instead of fourths like it is, or halves. So right here is 1/4, or pi over 4. This would be 3 pi over 4. So I need to think about where would pi over 3 be. Okay, so let me kind of zoom in on this. So pi over 3 is between pi over 4 and pi over 2, but it is a little bit closer to pi over 4. And again, you can get those as decimals if you want. So 1/4 is 0.25, 1/3 is 0.333, repeating, and then 1/2 is 0.5. So it's a little bit closer here than it is over there. So here I'm going to mark that as my pi over 3. And then if I look at where 2 pi over 3 would be, so I've got 1/3 and then 2/3, right? That would be about right here. So this is my 2 pi over 3. So now if you think about thirds, this kind of looks like here's 1/3, 2/3, this would be 3/3. And then again, so here's my fourth of the way, or half of the way up, sorry. Fourth of the way up, because this is my half, right? So I can think of my next third as being right here. And then my next one being about right here. And then there's my next one. So that's me just counting by thirds. I'm just marking that a little bit more clearly. Another way you could think about it is it's a fourth and a little bit more. So if I go a fourth and then a little bit more this direction, it's going to be about right here. And then another one this direction would be about right here. And then right here. So that gives me a little bit of that labeled. Okay, so then here's what this one was telling me. This one was saying my intervals are going to go from pi over 3 up to pi. That is 1 cycle. So from pi over 3, which is right about here, I'm just going to mark it out for myself a little bit, up to pi, I should make it through 1 full cycle in that little bitty area right there. So this one's going to be kind of squished in a little bit. Normally it goes from 0 to 2 pi. Now it's only going from pi over 3 to pi, so that's really shrinking it down. Okay, don't forget also that your amplitude is 3. So when I'm thinking about as high as I could possibly go and as low as I could possibly go, there's this interval to think about. Okay? All right, now remember also we're talking about cosine in this graph. So I'm going to look back at my cosine graph, which is right here. So in a typical cosine graph, I'm starting at 1 up here, and then I'm going down and going to -1, and then going back up. So one cycle from 0 up to 2 pi starts up high, ends up high, right? In the middle is my low point. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking about that when I'm thinking about this graph right here. I'm thinking I want to start up high and I want to end up high. Well, they told me I'm going from pi over 3 to pi. So that tells me that my high point is going to be at pi over 3 and at pi. So I'm going to start there, I'm going to end there, right? So that gives me my highest point. My lowest point is going to be right in between those two, which in this case would be at 2 pi. So all the way down here at 2 pi, I'm going to say it's about right there. Again, I'm totally estimating. That's going to be at -3. Okay, and then in between those points, I'm going to be going through the x-axis right here at 0. So I'm going to go down. And I'm going to be kind of steep here. And then I'm going to go back up. And I'm going to end up back up here. Okay, so that gives me kind of an idea of what it looks like. Then I'm going to go back down, back up, right? So if I'm here at pi, then my next third is going to be right here. That's going to take me down here at 0 again. I'm trying to line these up. And then back at my next third, I'm going to be up high again. So right about here. This is a really good guesstimate game right here. Okay, so going down and then back up. Okay, so as long as I get a few of those in there, that's good. And then the other thing you can do is look at where is it going to be right on the y-axis, right? Well, this was my low point. This was my low point. There's a high point. I need to go back down again. So this one actually ended up right here at 0 and then back up here. I promise these are curved. They're not V's. Okay, so you get the idea there. Okay, so shifting this phase shift, I get these 3 answers, but this right here tells me the majority of my information. I look at where is going to be my, instead of 0 to 2 pi, where are those going to be in my graph? So if I was looking at a sine graph on this one, if I was looking at sine instead of cosine, what's happening at 0, what's happening at 2 pi, that's what's going to happen at these values in my graph, okay? Okay, the last thing they're going to have you do, they're going to give you a graph, and they want you to write the equation for it, and that sounds very complicated, but it's really not as bad as you might seem if you just break it down. So let's start out by finding these 3 things. Again, this time I'm not given the numbers, so I have to kind of look on the graph for those. But my amplitude is always pretty easy to find. Where's the highest and lowest points? 3 and -3, so my amplitude is definitely 3. So that tells me that A is either 3 or -3. Well, the good thing about these is they tell me that A is greater than 0, or A is positive, right? If they tell me that A is greater than 0, that means it is positive. Same thing with B. They said B is greater than 0. That tells me it's positive. C, they actually give you a little more information. They said they want C to be the smallest positive integer that you can come up with. So again, that just tells me that it's positive, okay? I can focus on that. Okay, so that tells me that A is 3. So I can go ahead and think about what my equation is going to look like. They told me that it's definitely going to be a sine equation. They told me that in the directions. So make sure you pay attention to that. That's some really important information. And they also told me there's not going to be a plus D on the end. So I don't have to worry about that one. I just have to worry about A, B, and C. So I already know that this is 3. So I already know it's y equals 3 sine, and this middle stuff is what I'm looking for. All right, so let's talk about our period shift on this one. So if I'm looking at my sine graph right here, my typical sine wave, I'm noticing that mine starts at 0, 0, and ends at 2 pi, right? So at 0, and this is also at 0. There's a 0 in between, right? So if I'm looking at this one, mine is starting up here at 3 instead. So that tells me it's been shifted somehow, right? How much has it been shifted? Well, I'm going to look at where 0 is, okay? So my 0 in this case is right here. That tells me it's been shifted over pi over 4. Okay, so this was pi over 2. That means this is a fourth of pi right there. So if it's been shifted over pi over 4, that's my phase shift. Now I want you to be careful with this one. I don't know yet if it's been shifted to the left or to the right. Okay, so if it was shifted over this way, I would still have 0 at a negative pi over 4 too, right? So I don't know if this is negative or if this is positive. But what I do know is that my interval is going from pi over 4, all the way up here to that point right there, right? So let's think this through for a second. So let me write it out like this. I'm going to start with this statement right here, okay? I'm trying to think of a good way to say it. Okay, so if I'm going from here to here, my period or my interval, that means it's going from pi up to, 1/4 pi up to pi and 1/4, right? So 1 and 1/4 pi. So to me, that's an interval of pi. Another way to look at it, so let's just go from this starting point, from here to here where that ended, that one interval ended, it went from 0 up to pi, right? This one went from 1/4 pi or pi over 4 up to 1 and 1/4 pi right here. So that, again, that section right there is a difference of pi. So my period is pi. Okay. Maybe that was an easier way to look at it, looking at it from here to here. Sometimes these are really hard to explain. Okay, so then let me look at this one. So my phase shift, I know it shifted over to pi over 4, but I wasn't sure if it was pi over 4 or negative pi over 4, right? Let's solve this out then. So I'm going to solve this one first. That's why I kind of went back, because I want to know what b is. So 2 pi over the absolute value of b equals pi. So if I solve this, I'm just going to put this over 1 and cross multiply. So 2 pi equals pi times the absolute value of b. So if I divide by pi, that means 2 equals the absolute value of b, right? And again, that means this could be 2 or it could be negative 2, but they told me up here they want it to be positive. So b, in my case, is 2, because they want it to be positive 2. This one, a, was 3, because again, they want it to be positive. Okay, so I already know this is 2x then. I know that b is 2. C is the one that I'm worried about. So let's plug some stuff in here. I know negative c over b equals pi over 4. But I also know that b is 2. So this is negative c over 2 equals pi over 4. So again, let's cross multiply, right? So negative 4c equals 2 pi. So that means c equals 2 pi over negative 4, which is the same thing as pi over negative 2. But let's remember back up here again. They wanted c to be positive. Well, that tells me if I want this to be positive, then this, I would have to have a negative and a negative to cancel out, right? That means I need to put another negative in here. That tells me this had to be negative pi over 4. So in order for c to be positive, this had to be negative to cancel out this negative. Okay, and hopefully that helps you with all of those, because really then it's not a question of whether you're going to the left or to the right, because this needs to be negative no matter what. If this is going to be a positive c, it has to be negative to cancel it. Okay, so then finishing this up here, c is pi over 2. Okay, so c is pi over 2. So in my equation, this is plus pi over 2. And that's what they wanted me to do, is write that equation. So y equals 3 sine of 2x plus pi over 2. This is definitely more difficult than those first couple. So is c. Just figuring out that phase shift idea. And again, it's really difficult to explain also. So I apologize for kind of stammering over it, but it's hard to give you a good idea of what's happening in my brain when I'm doing these. Okay, so if you have questions on these, please let me know. Hopefully you can pause and kind of go back and reason through my mumbling and make some kind of sense of it. Okay.